Now, the WNBA cashing in on its recent surge in popularity, scoring a media rights deal worth more than $2 billion.
This wasn't a small error. They completely destroyed it, and suddenly everybody's pretending to be surprised. Yesterday evening, the WNBA made a decision so careless and aggressive that even their longtime supporters are stepping back. This wasn't planning. This wasn't displaying power. This was sheer desperation. They're falling apart without understanding the damage they're causing. Joe Rogan witnessed it and went quiet. Supporters watched and changed their minds. Athletes believed they were seizing power, but instead they might have ended the whole organization with no fixed timeline. No backup plan, no safety measures. Here's what nobody dares to mention openly. This didn't stem from confidence. It emerged from stress, from poor timing and choices, from actions taken too quickly, too visibly, and far too emotionally driven. Something major is collapsing internally, and the version you're getting currently isn't complete. Keep watching, because what's emerging next reveals why this could truly mean a permanent farewell. When success finally showed up then vanished for almost 30 years, the WNBA survived on waiting rather than celebration. Growth happened at a crawl, sometimes barely noticeable. Attendance was usually sparse, and beyond dedicated supporters, maintaining interest proved difficult. Media coverage surfaced during key events, then disappeared once more. Throughout everything, the organization continued existing mainly because the NBA kept providing financial backing year after year, despite never seeing returns.
2023, a WNBA player earned on average base salary of almost $114,000. An NBA player made an average base salary of $9.7 million.
Staying afloat became the objective, not expanding. Optimism remained, though it remained subdued. Then something unusual occurred. The 2024 season didn't merely shift statistics on paper. It transformed the atmosphere.
The WNBA, because the league just moments ago released the schedule for the upcoming season. Could they meet to open their 2026 season?
Matches seemed more energetic. Discussions began happening once more in spaces where the organization used to be overlooked. Viewership didn't gradually increase. It surged dramatically enough to demand notice. Merchandise disappeared from shelves quicker than anticipated. Stadiums packed in locations that previously struggled to generate interest. And for the first time in ages, enthusiasm didn't vanish following opening day. Fresh talent attracted fresh attention, and that attention remained focused. Regular viewers stayed beyond quick highlights. They consumed entire matches. They tracked developing narratives. This wasn't merely backing. It was forward movement finally becoming visible. That transformation didn't escape attention. Broadcasting networks began approaching the organization with greater seriousness. Corporate backers who previously stayed cautious started moving forward. Discussions regarding the future carried more assurance. Fresh broadcasting agreements were finalized with substantial funding included, set to launch in 2026.
The WNBA is projected to double their revenue this year from 2019, but player salaries have barely budged.
For observers who had tracked the organization since its beginning, this seemed like the breakthrough they had anticipated since the very start. The extended struggle finally appeared worthwhile. However, forward movement is delicate. It cannot survive disorder. It requires consistency, smart planning, and composed choices happening privately. Instead, the organization walked directly into challenging contract discussions precisely when public enthusiasm reached its peak. The circumstances couldn't have been more sensitive. Every action held significance. Every communication was monitored carefully. Minor errors suddenly carried greater weight because more individuals were watching than ever previously. Internally, stress began mounting. Standards escalated rapidly, driven by enthusiasm and fresh attention. But revenue hadn't matched pace yet. The substantial funding was guaranteed, not received.
Players boycotted over the shooting of Jacob Blake
from a tournament that she was supposed to play in protest.
When standards climb quicker than circumstances, conflict emerges, choices become hasty, boundaries become unclear, and that's typically when errors occur. Not minor ones, but the type that can disturb forward movement fundamentally. The discussion that became emotional, contract negotiations are typically boring intentionally. Private spaces, sealed entrances, measured wording, extended gaps between announcements. Most supporters never even acknowledge them. That's how they're supposed to function. Gradual advancement might be annoying, but it maintains things steady. This discussion, though, didn't remain uninteresting for long. The labor contract expired, and all participants understood a fresh agreement was essential. Management acted initially and announced their stance publicly. They declared there would be no forced closure, no abrupt stoppage imposed from leadership. That single announcement carried weight, communicated composure. It demonstrated restraint. More significantly, it gave management authority without appearing hostile. They didn't hurry. They didn't intimidate. They observed. The reply from the athletes' organization moved in a completely opposite way. Rather than reflecting that reserved approach, communications emerged quickly and forcefully. Declarations were extensive and charged. The wording seemed aggressive. It appeared less like two parties attempting to finalize an agreement and more like preparation for conflict. Demonstrations followed. Images designed to project strength instead attracted notice for incorrect reasons.
There's more influx of funds coming into the W, and then that will allow for the next level of salaries.
From an outside view, it didn't seem like tactics. It seemed emotional. Supporters observing this development didn't witness collaboration. They witnessed conflict. They didn't witness organization. They witnessed stress. Even individuals who grasped the athletes' complaints started hesitating. The communications established separation rather than solidarity. What aimed to collect backing began driving it away. That transformation occurred swiftly. Public opinion doesn't shift gradually when feelings are engaged. Online discussions began changing character. Encouraging comments became less frequent. Disapproving ones became more common. Individuals who previously defended the athletes started raising difficult questions. Not regarding justice but regarding methods. In professional athletics, appearances count. In an organization that still relies on external financing and public approval.
Since the WNBA was founded in 1996, it has averaged losing about $10 million per year.
Appearances count significantly more. This difference became unavoidable to overlook. One party remained disciplined and calculated. The other remained vocal and impulsive. That distinction influenced how the whole circumstance was perceived. It wasn't solely regarding requests anymore. It was regarding conduct. Joe Rogan's response afterward summarized that instant flawlessly. He didn't lose control. He didn't ridicule. He stopped. That halt wasn't puzzling. It was understanding. Anyone who's observed effective discussions understands they don't appear like this. They don't seem this revealed. They don't become emotional before the figures are resolved. What should have remained behind sealed doors had entered the public eye. And once discussions become emotional and visible, the attention moves away from answers. It becomes more difficult to withdraw, more difficult to restart, and far more difficult to prevent forward movement from fading away. The financial issue nobody desired to confront. The section that most arguments ignore. The figures, the calculations, the difficult circumstances nobody discusses because it's not emotional, it's not exciting, and it doesn't create popular content. But this is the section that determines whether an organization continues or fails. The WNBA has never shown steady earnings. Not a single time in almost 30 years.
Professional female basketball players could soon see a massive pay increase.
Not one season where the financial records revealed funds remaining following paying wages, transportation, venues, personnel, promotion, protection, and all operational expenses. Every year the organization expended more than it collected, and that shortfall, the NBA covered it every season. Without that backing, the WNBA wouldn't be here currently. That's the hidden reality behind all the energy of match highlights, major performances, and final second victories. Athletes naturally desired a larger portion of income. Theoretically, requesting income distribution like the NBA or NFL appears logical. Why shouldn't WNBA athletes receive a share of the funds they assist creating? The concept seems reasonable, even proper. But here's the problem that alters everything. Income distribution only functions when there's genuine earnings to distribute. The NBA and NFL don't simply divide figures on total income. They divide funds remaining following all costs are covered. Hundreds of millions, even billions sometimes. The WNBA doesn't function that way. The organization doesn't generate sufficient to have a remainder to distribute. What remains is a deficit every single year. Requesting to separate income in an organization that hasn't achieved earnings yet isn't simply challenging, it's economically unfeasible without threatening failure. Management attempted to handle worries in ways they could. They proposed significant wage raises that would have more than double typical athlete compensation in certain situations. Professional female basketball athletes could shortly witness a huge compensation raise. Transportation arrangements were enhanced, substituting economy flights with more secure, more comfortable options. Buildings received improvements, preparation and health personnel received focus, and housing arrangements for athletes competing internationally were reconsidered. These weren't small actions. They were genuine, concrete enhancements that directly influenced the experiences of the athletes. But management established limits at income distribution because the funds simply weren't available yet.
On a salary system that's tied to a meaningful share of revenue that we help generate.
Requesting them to consent would indicate either raising deficits significantly or threatening the closure of the organization completely. Circumstances became the invisible problem. Major broadcasting agreements guaranteeing substantial fresh income were already finalized, but they wouldn't become active until 2026. Until that funding begins arriving, there isn't a defined route to earnings. Requesting earnings distribution before the earnings materialize pushes management into a difficult position. Consent and they threaten investing more funds than they can responsibly commit. Decline in discussions halt. Disappointment increases and the organization balances on the brink of eliminating a season. This is why the timing counts equally as much as the amount. From a commercial viewpoint, reluctance isn't harsh or unjust. It's reasonable. Management is forming choices rooted in what currently exists, not what might exist eventually. They are safeguarding the organization from self-caused economic catastrophe. Yet from outside perspectives it appears like opposition. To supporters, feelings run intense, devotion to athletes is powerful, and disappointment is vocal. Numerous individuals witness only the demands for justice, equality, and increased compensation. Few pause to acknowledge that even the most idealistic contract must be founded in figures. Financial principles don't adjust to feeling, regardless of how warranted or virtuous the purpose seems. The separation between awareness and circumstances is sharp. Supporters witness enthusiasm, resistance, and declarations of values. Management witnesses financial documents, forecasts, and years of deficit history.
A lot of owners wouldn't buy into the WNBA because it's a loser in terms of financially.
Both parties desire the organization to thrive, but they're engaging in separate competitions. One party functions in news stories and social media. The other functions in accounting records and schedules. And until the arrival of income matches the standards of the athletes, disagreement is unavoidable. Errors can occur. Confusions expand. Forward movement constructed over generations threatens fading away in instances of urgency. Advocacy compared to circumstances. A dangerous boundary the WNBA has consistently represented more than basketball. From the absolute start, it wasn't solely regarding matches or scores on the display. The organization established itself as a space for transformation, for justice, for equality. That character drew supporters who trusted in the purpose, who desired to witness athletics and advocacy merge. For generations it succeeded. The supporters who remained didn't solely arrive to observe basketball. They arrived to back a cause. They applauded for the athletes on the floor and the declarations beyond it. That's what rendered the organization distinctive, almost wholly to certain individuals. But here's where things begin to change. The increase in recognition over recent years didn't originate from the original devoted supporter community exclusively. It originated from regular viewers, individuals who had never focused attention previously.
WNBA some must-see TV, and fans are tuning in and buying tickets at rates not seen in decades.
11. They weren't present for a cause. They weren't present to examine declarations or track social initiatives. They were present to witness basketball, to witness ability, velocity, and energy. And that's where conflict started appearing gradually, almost undetectably initially. Throughout the recent discussions, the communications from the athletes' organization relied significantly on ethical and social reasoning. Terms like justice, equality, and fairness controlled every public declaration. The demonstrations, the displays, the declarations were all presented as struggles for values. Theoretically, it's commendable. The athletes were defending what they trusted in, for every athlete who preceded them, for every generation that would come. But practically, the approach moved away from discussion and toward confrontation. What aimed to gather backing ended up puzzling supporters. Original supporters were agreeing, but the fresh supporters started becoming confused. Why are the athletes equating contract discussions to civil rights movements? Why is a wage disagreement presented as ethical outrage? The separation became obvious rapidly. Regular supporters desired to support matches. They desired to observe the season, to witness fresh talent create history. They weren't committed to declarations or demonstrations. Every public confrontation, every emotional announcement began seeming like a disturbance from the athletics itself. The enthusiasm that had attracted millions to venues and displays began dividing. Forward movement that should have been constructing was currently unraveling. Even the broadcasting noticed. Commentators and reporters began identifying the transformation. Attention concentrated less on the enthusiasm of the organization and more on the conflict of contract disagreements. The narrative altered from WNBA climbs to fresh peaks to athletes' conflict with management. Doubt hangs over everything. The story the organization had battled generations to establish was suddenly threatened with being rewritten instantly, not by the matches themselves, but by the public awareness of how discussions were managed. This is the complicated section regarding combining advocacy with commerce. When the organization was minor, it could maintain both characters without conflict. Advocacy was section of continuation. Supporters who valued social influence were also supporters of basketball. But currently, when recognition expands quicker than foundation, when regular supporters exceed the original foundation, objectives clash. Advocacy that previously drew notice currently threatens pushing away the exact individuals required to maintain expansion. The equilibrium becomes extremely fragile. Move excessively toward values and you threaten losing backing. Move excessively toward earnings and you threaten sacrificing character. Joe Rogan's surprised response throughout discussions summarized this flawlessly. He didn't ridicule the organization or the athletes.
Trans men or trans women in the WNBA. Like when
that starts, yeah.
Bro, that all of a sudden would be an exciting game.
He stopped noticeably attempting to understand how the athletics itself had become less important than the public conflict. That halt wasn't puzzling. It was understanding of the threat that the organization was threatening extended-term forward movement for immediate-term communications. Supporters, previously devoted and interested, began questioning whether the organization was emphasizing declarations over performance. The separation between advocacy and circumstances became unavoidable to overlook. And here's the difficult reality. Enthusiasm in athletics is fragile. Forward movement can disappear in weeks if the viewers feel separated. The WNBA was experiencing the largest surge it had ever witnessed. But the presentation of this contract conflict, the concentration on philosophy over basketball, established fractures. The regular supporters, the ones who might have remained for years, began questioning if the organization still valued the athletics itself.
Their first WNBA championship title, and I gotta tell you, the stands here packed with fans.
The distance between advocacy and circumstances was no longer minor. It was obvious. It required focus. And if disregarded, it could expense the organization more than one season. It could expense its trustworthiness, expansion, and continuation. Why unlimited seems so threatening? Hearing the term unlimited in athletics is like hearing an alarm signal. It indicates doubt, reluctance, and sometimes anxiety. For the WNBA, the expression closed down with no fixed timeline struck more forcefully than any figure or announcement ever could. Supporters didn't simply witness a terminated season. They witnessed forward movement, optimism, and energy disappear into nothingness. Years of expansion, the attention from fresh talent, the filled venues, the exhausted merchandise, all of it threatened vanishing before it could completely establish. That term made individuals halt, dispute, and concern. The threat of unlimited isn't only economic. Certainly, losing income is serious. Athletes depend on their wages and numerous supplement earnings. WNBA compensation is creating significant discussion with international organizations, but it's also mental. A season terminated without a defined conclusion creates doubt, a persistent darkness. Preparation timetables are interrupted. Group connection declines. Supporters lose confidence. Corporate backers begin questioning dedication. Each postponed match, each delayed choice adds conflict that doesn't vanish. The extended the doubt remains, the more difficult it becomes to reconstruct forward movement, even if an agreement is ultimately achieved. Circumstances worsen the issue. The WNBA was on the boundary of a breakthrough. Viewership had increased. Fresh broadcasting agreements were finalized for 2026, guaranteeing genuine income expansion. But precisely at that essential instant, the organization discovered itself in challenging contract discussions, magnified by emotional declarations and visible disagreements. The difference between capability and circumstances became distressingly apparent. Supporters witnessed chants fading away while public conflict occupied center focus. Individuals who found the organization for the excitement of basketball began questioning, is it truly valuable? That uncertainty can remain far more extended than any absent income.
Historically, WNBA players' salaries and salary caps have been fixed numbers.
Unlimited also complicates planning. Management can observe calmly. They've been financing the organization through deficits for generations. Athletes cannot manage the same comfort. Losing a season doesn't solely expense funds, it expenses influence. The extended the break, the reduced negotiating strength athletes possess when discussions restart. The stress increases unevenly and external observers acknowledge. Commentators, reporters, and analysts contribute opinions, forming awareness. In athletics, awareness counts. An organization that appears unreliable loses trustworthiness quicker than one that loses a few figures occasionally. Then there's the spreading influence on the competition itself. Fresh supporters who were enthusiastic following the 2024 season might never come back if the organization vanishes for excessively long. Established supporters already devoted might begin questioning direction and future possibilities. Group environment, neighborhood initiatives, and community supporter involvement all receive damage. What began as a commercial disagreement currently threatens destroying years of work, organization, and forward movement. The term unlimited doesn't simply characterize duration. It characterizes an emptiness where confidence, enthusiasm, and expansion can disappear. And yet, within that threat exists a teaching.
Ready for the culmination of what has been a wonderful celebration.
Unlimited compels every party to acknowledge objectives. What genuinely counts? Consistency or values? Expansion or quick advantages? Forward movement can't be maintained by communications exclusively. It demands thoughtful guidance, planning, and sensible choices. One incorrect movement could make history disregard the organization's recent successes and transform energy into disappointment. Every supporter, every athlete, every corporate backer senses it. That's why hearing unlimited connects so powerfully, because doubt isn't simply a term. It's an alarm. This narrative isn't regarding villains or champions. It's regarding circumstances, stress, and selections formed when restraint counted most. The WNBA didn't lose enthusiasm. It threatened losing confidence. And confidence requires far more extended to reconstruct than viewership. Joe Rogan's surprised response wasn't dramatic for entertainment. It was the type of halt you create when you understand forward movement might have been squandered. When chance fades because everybody communicated simultaneously rather than paying attention. An unlimited closure doesn't indicate the conclusion is determined, but it does indicate the schedule isn't cooperative anymore. Every silent month removes advancement achieved over active seasons. The inquiry currently isn't who was correct. It's who adapts initially, because the future of the organization won't be determined by declarations or demonstrations. It will be determined by whether logic appears before enthusiasm vanishes. If you desire to comprehend where this proceeds forward and what could still rescue it, remain connected, because this narrative is far from completed.